as part of my intention to be radically, bravely honest with myself, I've been I've been questioning about certain habits of mine, of a personal nature, and comparing it with an impulse to do so. Basically, I'm going to be talking about masturbation and the impulses of that. So if you don't want to hear about that, don't bother with this one. Right, so I've acknowledged that I've been used to a pattern of wanting to masturbate, and more specifically, wanting to actually see porn, I think. See beautiful women naked. It's, it's all the points of attraction, but it's condensed down into such a free and accessible source of being able to just see that whenever. And then it triggers a mechanism in my body where I get aroused, and it's kind of this, it's masturbation. It's this like mechanical way to get aroused, and then you go through the motions, and then you have your climax, and that's the cycle. We just keep repeating that cycle. Well, that's how it's been for me anyway. And it'll be curious to know other people's relationship when it comes to masturbation. I imagine that you could not have it as this mechanical override way. It should be instead coming from an impulse. You could just in the moment feel aroused because you were turned on and something turned you on, or your thoughts themselves turned you on. And that's more true to the now. It's more true to truth, because people do get aroused, and no matter what was the catalyst, they are in that moment aroused, and that's authentic. It is. And in society, we immediately jump on it and we go, that's not right, or whatever rules there are, whatever restrictions there are. So then we start suppressing it, and we start trying to distract ourselves, and if we feel guilty about it, or if we're in a space where we don't have to feel guilty, we can just lean right in. And that's part of the wonder of masturbation. I don't think it's this blanket term that should put a negative light on or stigma on people who masturbate too much. I guess it's down to your intent and your relationship with it, just like with everything else. So my point is that I realized, okay, so earlier on, I did feel a compulsion. I was in bed, I was nice and cozy. You normally wake up with some morning wood as a guy anyway, or at least in the early hours. And so you remember that feeling of turn on, because that turn on might last for a while. It might last for minutes, it might last for hours. But most likely it does fade very quickly for me. I'll find myself physically aroused from somewhere, I don't know. And then, I wanna see to that, right? And because I'm at home alone a lot of the time, and I've got the peace to do that, I just allow myself straight away. But then, because I get really used to being treated by the free visuals of porn, and I lean into it even when I'm not feeling aroused. I just jump into it because it's so easy and free to do. Whenever I'm bored. And that's an open admission. I can do this mechanical override anytime. So if I'm bored, I want to distract myself. I just want a change in my daily routine. if I would just want to waste some time, if I just want to see some tits. It's as simple as that for my, primate brain. It's as simple as that. Sometimes I just want to see some sexiness. And whatever. I'm sure lots of people share this relationship, this dysfunctional relationship with not just the masturbation itself, but porn. And I think it's always multifaceted. Without getting into that kind of stigma and judgment area of that dysfunctional relationship, I want to talk more about, all right, if I admit that my patterns say, even when I'm bored, I could just go do this manual override. Then that's not coming from the compulsion every time. That's not living in the moment. I think it's different. And it comes down to this. If you acknowledge that your relationship with it is seen as a habit, then a habit can be seen as something that kind of takes a hold of you rather than you having control of it. It suggests that there's the feeling of compulsion and emotion, whether you conjured it or it conjured itself, even if your body is just reacting in weird ways, that's natural, and that is, right? You didn't, no habit created that emotion, that compulsion. So then when it comes from that source, that's authentic, and I think that can be allowable. And if you lean into that every time and no other instance, then you'll probably have a healthier relationship with your body, with your impulses and with your emotions, and then you're steering the ship. Because if you lean into it at that moment, then you can let your imagination take control, because a lot of the time it does come from there and not from a visual. But the fact that it's coming from a message in our minds, our memory is saying, oh, remember you were horny before. Well, how about now? Or if it's about smoking as a habit. Oh, remember you thought about having a cigarette before. Well, how about now? And it's over and over and over, this voice in our head, this compulsion. It's not necessarily the impulse of the moment, although if it's some kind of chemical addiction, it can feel like that. But it should come from an emotion. It should come from more of a natural compulsion. So I don't know what it's like to be a smoker. I'm just guessing. But if it's a habit, and if we can establish that habits have these certain characteristics, it's almost like a voice in the back of your head always. And so if you can characterize that being from ego, a story that we tell ourselves, a promise that we made, if we were feeling the addiction before, then we might not be feeling it later. But it's that voice that comes back and says, remember this addiction, remember this feeling, like you could do it now, you can give into it now. But that's not authentic. That's like a promise that you made. And so if you imagine that's part of ego, as opposed to an authentic, turn on, or an authentic like need for relief or release, whether it's through a cigarette or whether it's through like eating something, or whether it's through grabbing an alcoholic beverage, whatever your like impulse is to have that at that moment, I think that's maybe more authentic, because that's what your body tells you, and your emotions tell you that's a moment of panic. And I think it's better to distinguish between those more authentic moments when the addiction commands your body, I need this, right? Rather than the niggling little habit reminders from your ego. Because that's a pattern. That's a habit, and you don't have to give into that. That's like a message just replaying itself in your mind. But it doesn't have the same gravity as those moments. They might be frequent or infrequent, but those moments are only authentic right then and there. And a lot of the time it's inconvenient. But right then and there, if you have this impulse, whatever it may be, whether it's through addiction or whether it's through just a pattern that you've instilled in yourself, you can lessen the moments that you give into it in between by not giving into when it comes from a habit. Because if you hear that voice in your head going, oh, how about a cigarette, or how about a drink, or how about tossing off, whatever it is, if you hear that idea come through your mind, and then you have the awareness to just check in with your body to authenticate that. Because if your body goes, oh no, I'm not actually turned on right now, or no, I don't actually, I'm not craving it. Sometimes your body does crave whatever it is. But my point is, the times when it doesn't, you need to check in with your body and see if it's authentic. And if it's not authentic, you can determine that replaying message in your head, that little voice, that's of the ego, and that's of a pattern, and that's of a habit. It's not authentic in the moment. You don't want it. And you go, no, actually, I don't want it right now. I know I've wanted it a lot, but right now, I don't actually want it. That's just a message. So you can stop replaying that message. Turn off the answer phone. If your body says no, then it's a no. So that helps identify the source of the thought. Is it from ego? Is it a pattern? Is it a habit? Or is it from being in the moment, being more true in the now, in what is, rather than what you expect? It's a curious addition to this line of thought.